All right, well, people might keep trickling in, but I'm gonna get us going today. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be a great presentation. Just to get us started off, I'd like to let you know who we are and what our presentation is about today. My name is Sarah Tedeschi. I'm a community development educator in Crawford County with the Community Food Systems Program with UW-Madison Division of Extension. And I'm here to just help facilitate today. We have two wonderful speakers that I will introduce. Mia Ljung, who is also a community development educator in Outagamie and Winnebago counties, also within Community Food Systems Program, and also within the UW-Madison Division of Extension. And Kelly Maynard, who works with the who is a cooperative development specialist with our Center for Cooperatives at the UW-Madison, which is also within Division of Extension. So today's no-cost webinar is for food entrepreneurs and farm-based food businesses, and it's brought to you by our FEED initiative, which stands for Food Entrepreneurship Ecosystem Development. So FEED is the acronym of this initiative, and it is within the UW-Madison's Extension Community Food Systems Program. It's a statewide program. It fosters equitable, resilient, and sustainable community food system development through research, evaluation, project-based partnerships, and programming like today's. The FEED program has two major projects. One of them is this online webinar series for food and farming businesses, and that runs in this late winter period. And a 2-day summit for food and farming businesses in the fall, which I highly recommend, a very robust gathering. And if you can make it, keep an eye out for that. I'd like to make a little plug, but I'll mention it again as a reminder toward the end. We do ask you to complete a very brief survey, and it really think of it as helping to keep programs like this low cost or no cost, and really helps us improve future programming. We'll put that link in the chat. If everyone knows where that is, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, there's a little bubble chat icon. If you click on that, you will see that there is content throughout the presentation in that area of your screen. And we'll put the link to the evaluation there. And I'll also remind you about that toward the end of the presentation. I'd also just like to mention, we hope you have questions, and Mia and Kelly we will certainly save time at the end for questions, and I will help if you put them in the chat. That's a fine place to put them, and I'll pull them out of there at the end and make sure Mia and Kelly receive those. Or at the end during the Q&A, you can also unmute yourself and just speak up and have dialogue with me and Kelly that way. So that's how we'll take on questions. So feel free to put them in the chat so you don't forget, or we'll be able to unmute you at the end and have you ask then. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mia and Kelly to talk about today's topic.
Thank you, Sarah. I do see a raised hand from Katie. Just want to see if that's something we need to address right away. Katie, would you mind unmuting? I don't know, it might have been it's easy to touch the wrong button sometimes too. Anyway, you can let us know, Katie, if you need anything right away. Otherwise, we can wait till the end. All right, we're going to actually turn it over to you all right away. And we're going to use Menti. It's like an online software system where you can interact, use polls, and various tools. We're asking you the question, what makes you curious about using a cooperative business structure to access farmland? So you can use your phone to scan this QR code, or you could also use the link. Oh, thank you, Katie, for letting us know. Yep, I know the buttons can be kind of confusing on Zoom. So you can use the QR code or use the Menti link that is going to be put in the chat here, or is already put in the chat. So please go to Menti, and I'll start sharing my screen soon to see what you all responded. We're just curious to hear from you first, and then we're going to jump right in. All right. Well, hopefully you all have been able to grab the QR code or the link, and I'm going to just start. I'm just going to find that window so I can share my screen. Can you all see the Menti screen here? Yeah, it's working. Gotta love technology and sometimes hate it, but today it's working. So, all right, I see a lot of answers coming in. And if you're not able to figure out Menti, feel free to put in your answer into the chat, and we'll be sure to address that too. So I'm just going to read out loud here a few of the responses that's coming in. I'm going to first just refresh. All right, so I see some of the responses of what makes you curious about using a cooperative business structure to access farmland. I see expensive land. Yep. Growth. I work in agriculture. Lack of access to land. Lower cost. Support entrepreneurs. Wonderful. Awesome. Let the responses come in. We're just going to watch this screen for just a little bit longer. And this can kind of come in throughout our presentation. So like if there's more things that come to mind, please feel free to throw it in through the Menti. I'm just going to refresh my screen one more time here. Yep, I see some more here. So built-in collaboration. Let's see, more equitable. Those are two new responses. This is amazing. We actually have a lot of these concepts already built into our presentation. I love this. So we're going to get to a lot of these parts in our presentation here today. So let me go ahead and start my slides. And Kelly, did you want to start sharing your screen?
I'll start sharing.
Thank you. I'm going to get mine up here. All right, so just a little overview here. What we're going to get to today, it's a big topic, very big topic, right? So we're going to explore, first of all, farmland access, just a little bit of a background and grounding because the topic is maybe not on top of everybody's mind. And so we want to get to some of that first, and I'll go through those slides. And then Kelly is, of course, the expert in everything cooperative. So she's going to go over the cooperative business structure. She's going to go over some types of food and farm cooperatives. She's going to give some examples of farms that own and operate land cooperatively. And you will get a list of more resources. As part of this presentation, you will get the whole, a copy of the presentation, also, again, a list of the resources that we've compiled just for this purpose. So we can go to the next slide, Kelly. And just because it is such a big topic, especially looking at all of the various components of farmland access, we want to just name some of these today. And we won't be able to get to all of them as background. But some of the central farmland issues in the United States today is kind of like a winding road. And like kind of you responded to in the Menti, there's a lot to it. So availability, access to land is a big barrier and challenge. Housing, like how do you establish housing, especially if you're multiple people wanting to live together. Financing, accessing financing, especially together, is tricky. And of course, even traditional means of financing can be very tricky, especially if you're a farmer who may not come from a farming family. Proximity to markets. So we know the most expensive farmland is going to be closer to urban areas and closer to markets. So that can be a very big challenge. when it comes to farmland access. Climate change is definitely a big challenge for a lot of farmers, as we know. There's definitely considerations of racism and structural discrimination going on still, unfortunately, when it comes to accessing financing, but also just maybe not feeling always welcomed in rural areas. That can be actually a big barrier too when it comes to accessing farmland. The wealth gap, we're going to scratch the surface on that one in a little bit. And again, that infrastructure piece, including housing, is a huge barrier as well. Policy and zoning is another consideration. Lease insecurity. So if you're not owning your farmland, well, how does that lease look like? And is it stable? Is it sustainable? Can you build equity? All of those things. Those are big questions. Farm transitions. We know a lot of farmers right now are retiring and they may not have a successor. So this is a need that a lot of organizations like Extension is trying to fill and work with those farmers and landowners to make sure that that land stays in agriculture. If you're a younger farmer, student loan debt can be a big barrier. And then, of course, land access costs along with other costs like healthcare, labor, childcare, you name it. We're not trying to put this out there to like bog people down, but just to show that it's a winding road, and there's a lot of considerations when it comes to this topic. Next slide, please. And we just wanted to name that this publication has been very helpful to do this grounding. This is a publication from the National Young Farmers Coalition, came out in 2020, and it's showing a really great recommendations for moving forward toward a more equitable farmland farming future. So it will name some historical components of land access and farmland access, but also looking forward and like how can we move this forward to make sure that as many people that want to farm actually can farm and do that sustainably. Next slide, please. All right, this diagram, please forgive me. This is trying to winnow down just a few highlights or touch points in U.S. history that can set the stage for farmland and land access. And so forgive me, I'm definitely missing a lot here, but I just wanted to show you a few of those touch points to just wrap our head around and how we are now informed today and how farmland access plays out today. So this diagram illustrates points in history that still have impact on land access today. So the first one says indigenous land stewardship. So prior to European settlement, indigenous people stewarded all of the land in what would become the United States. And they engaged in robust agricultural and economic activity. And their stewardship was primarily done in a cooperative and regenerative manner. And the second one represents European colonization. So rights of land ownership only extended to white men at that time. Colonial statutes explicitly prohibited non-white individuals from owning land. The third one refers to the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 and the Homestead Act. So that encouraged westward expansion and settlement of land stewarded by indigenous people. The fourth one is trying to cram a lot in one here. So this one says alien land laws and exclusion of Black farmers. So these laws, the alien land laws actually aimed to shut Japanese and Chinese immigrants out of land ownership. So even though the Naturalization Act of 1870 included African Americans were often excluded from groups that were organizing around this topic, such as the Southern Farmers Alliance. So despite the fact that both Black and white farmers at the time faced really big challenges and difficulties due to rising price of farming and the decrease of profit, this protective organization known as the Southern Farmers Alliance did not allow Black farmers to join. So because of that, a group of Black farmers decided to organize their own alliance to fill this need. And this alliance was called the Colored Farmers National Alliance and Cooperative Union. So just hinting that there's been a lot of cooperative organizing in the past done by a lot of people, including a lot of people of color. So, and then the fifth one talks about the redlining policies. That's closer to our history today. So in the 20th century, these policies discouraged lending for home ownership or business expansion in predominantly Black neighborhoods. So again, I'm just scratching the surface here, but next slide, please, Kelly. One elephant in the room that has direct or indirect kind of correlation to what I've just talked about with the history of land access or lack of land access is the racial wealth gap. So I did put a little speech bubble there. What's farmland got to do with the racial wealth gap? Well, it seems like it does have a big influence, because one important indicator for business opportunity in general, not just farming, but any type of business opportunity, includes access to financing for infrastructure, like land, right? The most essential business infrastructure for a farmer would be land. So as you may know, wealth varies greatly by race and ethnicity. So that is often referred to as the wealth gap. And so here we're showing the median household wealth by race, ethnicity. And so the blue here is the white median family in the US. And this spans from 1983 through 2024 as compared to Black and Latino households. So wealth here is measured by variables like income, home ownership, retirement savings, student loan debt. And we know that a lot of business owners kind of bootstrap, to get started. And if you're a farmer, traditionally, you may rely on that family, like inheriting a farm, so to speak. But a lot of people can't rely on that if they don't have that background. And it's becoming less common even within white families. So as you can see, the wealth gaps are very stark, and they're not getting any smaller. Next slide, please. And then looking at farmland in Wisconsin. So this screenshot here, it's really hard to see. I'm really sorry, but you should go and look this up yourself if you're interested. The American Farmland Trust put out this really cool publication called Farms Under Threat. And so it's giving you an understanding of how Wisconsin and other states in the United States are doing in terms of farmland. And it's showing, well, it's named Farms Under Threat 2040, Choosing an Abundant Future. And it shows how Americans might lose or choose to save millions of acres of farmland and ranch land by 2040. So it projects land conversion scenarios of farmland that is best suited for intensive food and crop production. And Wisconsin scored among the top states for conversion of agricultural land to urban and highly developed low-density residential uses. And then if you look at the diagram here to the right, it shows the policy response in relation to the conversion threat. So it's putting Wisconsin in this orange box of kind of like medium threat in terms of, because the conversion threat is higher than its policy response. So it's a complex projection, but it's kind of showing what we do boots on the ground as educators, organizers, policymakers, in response to this trend of knowing that a lot of our farmland is going to be in transition in the next 15 years. And then we also know that a lot of farm numbers are declining and land values are increasing. And then next slide, please. So yeah, this is also just scratching the surface. Part of the Census of Agriculture came out from 2022. These are just some of the highlights. There are an increased number of beginning farmers and ranchers throughout the United States. There's even an increase of Black farmers that was measured in Wisconsin. And the average age of a farmer is 58 years old. In the United States, was 57 in Wisconsin. It's very close trend lines there. So pretty, not saying old for those who are, over 50 in this audience, but definitely not incoming newer farmers, right? These are nearing retirement age. The other point that is good to know is like in the United States, 95% are white farmers, and Wisconsin is 99%. So predominantly white farmers. And then women, landholders and farmers is 36%, both in the US and in Wisconsin. And there's a good publication that came out of Extension, actually, Windicator. So if you want to look that up later on, you can. We have links to all of these in our resource list. Next slide, please. Oh, and now it's your turn, Kelly.
Thanks, Mia. Yeah, so, you know, for a lot of you, whether you knew some of that background or not, you know, the sentiment about, you know, farmland being expensive, hard to access, is why you're here. So, and hopefully that rich kind of background information helps set our stage. I want to, before I start diving deep into the cooperative model and how we might use it to help with accessing farmland, I just want to say that there are a number of different kinds of models that people are innovating these days. Some of them, you know, for the more traditional, like individual or couple accessing farmland, but sometimes people in various types of groups. So this is by no means the only way of potentially making this easier. And if you are interested in hearing about other models after today, Mia and I are part of a working group that has more information on some of those models. So if you're just interested in the idea generally, we'd be happy to share more information after the webinar. So when we're talking about this, you know, why might you consider a cooperative structure for accessing farmland? Part of this would be the same reason you might use a co-op for any purpose, sharing costs and risks, right? So making it a little bit more affordable for yourself and not taking on all of the risk. Sometimes, you know, it can be hard to work in a group, but also it can be very lonely to work alone. And so the having the kind of group support of a farming endeavor, you know, this question about we know we have a lot of farmland that is going to be sold outside of families, right? And so it's one way to address that succession piece. And we know that for farmers, owning your land is one of the primary ways that you establish and build equity that you can then leverage in other ways in your business. And so using a co-op model to buy land as opposed to perhaps renting land, or even if you have a great long-term lease arrangement, this can help with that equity building. So just to ground us, when I say cooperative, I'm talking about a very specific entity type. And so broadly speaking, we say it's an enterprise that's owned and democratically controlled by the people who use its services. And so a co-op is really legally, structurally about the way that a group of people decide to run an enterprise together. Co-ops are a form of business in our state. In our state, we've got 2 statutes that you can use to incorporate a cooperative. These exist at the state level, and they're all a little bit different state by state. Wisconsin and Minnesota have very similar statutes, in case we have any non-Wisconsin folks in the audience. But one theme that co-ops really across the country and really internationally have in common are these kind of 3 defining characteristics. And that is that when they are created, membership is defined. Types of membership are defined, and those members are the owners of the business. In Wisconsin, as few as 5 people can form a cooperative. Most co-ops have many more members who are owners of the enterprise than that. The members agree to control this enterprise democratically. It's one member, one vote principle. And in some smaller cooperatives, this may be direct democracy, and that is so that all of the members also serve on the board of directors, which makes kind of the big picture decisions in a lot of cooperatives, that is a board of directors. It's a representative democracy, so a board of directors that is elected from the membership. And so it's important, the one member, one vote principle really defines co-ops distinct from like investor enterprises, where the amount of a business that you own, the number of shares you own, for example, also impacts how much vote you have. And then members benefit from the cooperative first and foremost by it being created to address some need that they have, right? Offering some good or service to them. But another way that it benefits members is if it's a co-op that has the potential to generate profit, that profit is shared amongst the member owners on the basis of how much they use the co-op, and does not go to outside investors. So when I say cooperative, because there's a lot of people, you can say we can be cooperative, we can behave cooperatively and collaboratively. But when I'm talking to groups about cooperating, I try to get them to be very specific. What is the kind of one or two key functions that you are cooperating, you or your businesses are cooperating to do? Being really clear in defining ownership. There are a lot of ways in agriculture, we're probably most familiar with what we producer-owned cooperatives. So the farms are the owners of the cooperative, and in most cases, those producer-owned cooperatives are helping market the products that the farmers produce, or there's like ag supply cooperatives, right? So they are providing various range of inputs that farms need to run their enterprises. And so, getting really down in the weeds, what are the goods and services very specifically that the co-op's providing to these member owners once you've established who are these people? Clarity around who is making the decisions. Do you have a board? Are you also hiring management that interacts with that board and helps run the business? And this question about what legal structure are you using, I want to put on here because in Wisconsin, we are very fortunate to have really great cooperative statutes, and in most cases, if folks want to form something that functions on a cooperative basis that kind of adheres to these principles, we can use our statutes, our cooperative statutes, those legal structures. In some states, people are not as fortunate, and so they use structures like LLCs for the purposes of forming an entity, and then they write operating agreements so that they function like a cooperative. So what are the examples that we have been thinking about and talking to people about, and in some cases working with people on when it comes to using this specific business model to access farmland? So the two models I'm going to talk about, focus on two models today. And this land cooperative model, at least in the state of Wisconsin right now, it's relatively hypothetical. It's allowed. Mia and I are working on a guide right now that should be available by the end of this year that lays out some more of the considerations and process for doing this. But when we think about this model, imagine you are a beginning farmer. You have established your farm business and are on some rented land. You may know some other folks who are either aspiring to start their own businesses, or maybe also have begun to run their own farm businesses. And you might be doing some similar types of production and marketing. There might be differences between you. But in this structure, when we think about, particularly large farms that are going to be sold, right, in the order of, 100 acres or hundreds of acres, a lot of beginning farmers, particularly if they're going to do smaller scale enterprises, diversified enterprises, they don't need that much land, right? And it's hard to afford. And so the idea here is that you'd have 5 or more farms who would form a cooperative. And the cooperative would buy the land. And once you are on the land, what the farms that are the owners of the cooperative can agree to is, based on the needs that each farm has and the size of the piece of land that you have purchased, we are each going to, by investing in this cooperative, we are each going to get, access to some equal share of acreage. There'd be ways to make it different acreages. We're each going to get access to a share of acreage that allows us to conduct our individual farming enterprise, right? And so we may or may not decide to cooperate in other ways, right? But the primary thing that this co-op is offering us is ownership, ownership in a piece of farmland that we couldn't do on our own. Once we've owned the farmland, we could decide, hey, some of us may also market products together, or maybe we all co-invest in some infrastructure like a processing kitchen. There'd be a number of ways, other ways on top of this, the purchase of the land, that you could decide to cooperate. But that the key purpose kind of in establishing this cooperative is that the cooperative can buy the land, and then the member owners of the co-op then have a kind of occupancy right to a certain amount of acreage on that land. And this, this co-op, one of the other things that it can allow you to do is co-invest in infrastructure, right? It can be really expensive to build a pack shed, to own large equipment, et cetera. And so those are other things that could be shared in a model like this. As I think more and more and talk to more and more people about this model, I imagine this being not a huge number of farm enterprises, right? Maybe on the order of 5 to 10, that would probably be sufficient for managing the group dynamics and everything else. So, perhaps all of the big decisions are made by one representative. You have a board that's all of the farm businesses, and each of them are, get their vote when it comes to making board level decisions. If the land that this, hypothetical cooperative purchases, maybe there's extra space, it would be up to the group. Like, do we want to also make some of this available to renters? Those renters maybe are not owners in the cooperative, and you could, it'd be up to the co-op to decide the terms of having renters on the land. In case there's folks that are familiar with the cooperative housing model, this is most similar to that. In an equity housing cooperative, when you become a member, you pay a pretty significant equity investment, kind of like oftentimes on the order of like a down payment. And that gets you a share in the co-op, an ownership stake in the co-op, and then access to one of the housing units that the co-op owns. So you get an operating agreement that gives you access to an apartment, or maybe a cottage, or something else that's part of the housing cooperative. And so this is really taking that model and applying it to land. The other model that I'm gonna kind of lay out today that is, particularly when you're thinking about a group of people accessing a piece of land, is a worker cooperative farm. And so, I mentioned when we think in agriculture, one of the most common cooperative types in terms of how the membership is defined are those producer members. So typically, when I think about any of the agricultural cooperatives that we have in Wisconsin, Foremost Farms, Alcivia, Organic Valley, right? These are the members of those cooperatives are the farms. And so whoever owns those farms, but the membership unit is at the farm level. Another model that is used in a lot of different sectors, and there are some examples in the agricultural space, is the worker cooperative farm. And in a worker cooperative, the members are the employees of the business. So this can literally be applied to any sector in the economy. But the idea here is that the primary workforce of a single farm enterprise are all the owners of the business. And so this is a way, to think about running a single farm with a larger group of people than maybe by yourself or just one other, a partner, spouse, which is, often the most common model. So maybe you've got a group of 5 to 10 people, you've all got experience from maybe doing some farming on your own, working on other farms, and you're ready to launch into your own business, but you don't want to do it alone. And so in this model, certainly you could form a cooperative that could either rent land or purchase land, right? Certainly part of this model is that with a larger group of people, you can pool more equity to hopefully get access to a piece of land. And what you are getting by being part of this co-op is that you get to help be an owner and run a farm, right? And all of the assets that it acquires and owns. And again, most of the examples of worker cooperative farms from across the US have a relatively small number of member owners, and so they all compose the board. And I do want to say that when quite often when people ask about like how do you do anything as a co-op, like if you have to talk about every single decision, in either of these scenarios, I think that that is not what you would set out to do. You would say, it would be entirely reasonable and almost an expectation that the board would make high-level decisions about an annual budget, big investments, helping lay out what the rules are and policies and things that everyone are going to follow. But you can also then decide, day-to-day operations can be, different people can be in charge of different areas of the farm. It's not that every single decision has to get made by the group. In this particular case of a worker cooperative farm, you could also hire people who are not owners in the business if you needed some additional part-time support. And we do have examples of this from here in the Midwest, Humble Hands Harvest in Iowa, as well as other places. I've named just a few here that are from out east, but there are examples across the country. Really quickly, I just want to say that, as I alluded to initially, even just using the cooperative model in terms of a legal structure, there are yet more models that people are using that in part to access farmland and help kind of diffuse the cost and everything else. And so, we've talked about producer-owned cooperatives and then the worker-owned model. If anyone is a member of a grocery cooperative or a credit union, those are what we call consumer cooperatives. So the people who buy the stuff from the co-op, the consumers of the things, are the owners. And so in the case of this first model that's super interesting, this is a case, Glen Valley Organic Farm Cooperative, that's in British Columbia, where the community pooled a significant investment of money. This farm has been around for a long time. They formed a cooperative. I think it's a $5,000 buy-in in order to buy a piece of land that is maintained ownership as a cooperative, and then they lease the land out to two distinct farm businesses, at least at this point in time. And so those two businesses don't own the land themselves, but they have long-term very stable lease arrangements. We have the option with our statutes, and there are a number of other states where this is also possible, to have multiple types of ownership in a cooperative. And so this multi-stakeholder or hybrid example, our table cooperative is from out in the Pacific Northwest, but our table is a single farm where you've got that farm, the worker-owned farm model going on. They also, as part of their marketing enterprise, there are other farms that are producer members that help supply additional product, and they have those consumer members all in their cooperative. And then a much more recent example from Iowa is, again, kind of in this community and consumer-owned ideas, pooling funds so that they are available when farmland becomes, kind of opportunistically when farmland becomes available, to buy that land and then decide, are we going to set this up for long-term leases? Are we going to kind of do land contract arrangements to transition that ownership? But again, as a way to form a cooperative structure that pools capital from a large group of people to buy farmland. So there are a lot of considerations and questions. Whatever kind of co-op you may not be considering, don't go it alone. There are, people like myself are available. It's the kind of thing that requires a lot of meetings and conversations and hard questions, and it is worth getting outside support. There are a lot of different sources of that support. So I won't belabor all of these questions right now. We can get into them more in the Q&A time. But it is very important before jumping into this kind of enterprise, whether it's to access land or something else, to take the time with the group of people that you want to form a cooperative with, to ask yourself some of these hard questions and get things down in writing. And as Mia mentioned, we've got a long list of references here and recommended reading. I won't belabor what these all are, but we'd be happy if there's a specific topic that's of interest to you, we'd be happy to point you to one or a few of these so that it's not quite such a long list. And again, this will be in the slides that you get. These are a range of organizations that are providing resources and technical assistance in this area. So again, this is not something you've got to figure out for yourselves. If you're a farmer or part of a group looking to farm, definitely make use of these organizations that are there to provide support. And yeah, maybe I'll go back to this slide and we can start Q&A. I don't know that I saw any questions come in on the chat while we were talking.
Yeah, I've been watching. Thank you both so much. Just wonderful, wonderful information. Fascinating. All right, anybody out there, questions? This could be put in the chat, although this is a time to just unmute and ask your questions and have a little back and forth and dialogue with presenters and with each other. Is anybody out there considering forming a cooperative of any kind, or agricultural based? I'm curious about that. Or is anyone currently involved? And what are some of the issues and or strategies you could share?
Hey, Kylie, go ahead, Kylie, if you want to unmute.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kylie Friedrich, and I am the local foods coordinator for the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance. And a lot of our alliance members are interested in co-op development, interested in what co-op opportunities could be available as these smaller producers and folks who are looking for first generation land access. So from a business perspective, we're really looking at how can we take the marketing and collective group pitch that ends up happening and can be beneficial from this cooperative model, but do so while everyone does maintain their autonomy. So I'm curious to see what other cooperative goals or even cooperative tenets we as a very young organization could be adopting to make that process easier for folks.
Which part of the process easier, the marketing piece or?
Yeah, so from an alliance perspective, from the structure of the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance, we're really trying to help create those direct buying opportunities for folks. And I know individually, a lot of those farmers are looking at what cooperative models might look like for themselves. So I'm just wondering, in a way that we are governed by our board, we are governed by some of the decisions that get made that way. Are there resources or ways that we could be, on the proactive side of that for folks to get them in touch with, other ways to work within the either Wisconsin Farmer Union chapters or extension opportunities, anything you might think could be helpful for our folks?
Certainly the, Wisconsin Farmers Union is a chapter 185 for cooperative, in case anybody is wonky and likes statutes like I do. And, I think that there are ways, I don't know if this is part of your question, but there are ways to think about your structure that I know certainly we field a lot of questions and spend a lot of time kind of disentangling the nonprofit structure from the co-op structure. But there are ways to think about how your nonprofit is structured so that it has, that farmer voice and things like that, if it does not already. I think that I definitely know some folks over the years who've have explored co-ops in that region. And I think even the process of like forming a steering committee, this is what we call the body of people that comes together to explore a cooperative idea that explores, and it functions very much like a cooperative board does. So establish like, what does it mean to be a member, one vote, etc. It's a great kind of practice space for all of this group work. And then what kinds of cooperation do we want to do, or cooperatives do we want to explore? And I'd be happy to, provide some resources about what steering committees look like and types of small cooperatives that folks have considered. I know I get asked a lot about small scale marketing cooperatives, which are, if I'm being honest, very hard to do. Whether it's a cooperative structure or otherwise. There was some research out of North Carolina State. It's 7 or 8 years old now, but in the 20 teens, when the food hub model really took off around the country, and some of the, those are structured in a lot of different ways. Some of them are cooperatives, some of them are nonprofits. They have different structures. But this focus on aggregation and distribution for local and regional food, and this study that I point to, and as I look about at the food hubs that have been successful, you have to, in order to support the kind of staffing that it takes to do really good marketing, and have one or more staff people employed by the business. Usually you need a pretty quick path to about $1 million in sales, which is really hard to do. Especially in our where we have a limited growing season. And so we do have some examples of smaller scale marketing cooperatives in our state. I would say the ones that still exist are the exception, not the rule, if you will, except there's one, there's a larger one, the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative, that has several million in annual sales. Small scale marketing co-ops are super duper hard to make run without burning people out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Kylie. Let's see. Jeannie, you posted a couple times. Do you want to unmute and talk a little bit about your situation? And
sure. I'm actually
Thank you.
excited. I'm attending these for a double fold, one for work, and then because I work for a nonprofit native CDFI, and then personally I am a farmer as well. So I'm a educator and housing counselor by day and a farmer by night. And one of the biggest struggles is definitely property. We're northern Wisconsin. Property is a huge issue. Capital, that is another issue. Like, it's hard for us to grow. It's hard for us to sustain. It's hard for us to even know where to go for any resources or information. We've taken advantage of one grant through the state with fencing, but that's the only grant that we actually knew about. And we've been doing farming since 2018, and we've literally bootstrapped it the whole entire time. So we would like to grow. We would like to expand. We believe in what we're doing. We have grass-fed cattle. We have Charlet, which is a pink meat, but we still have a huge challenge of both. Marketing is a challenge. We're so remote that people don't want to come up to us to purchase the animal or look at the investment. We sell them for show cattle, show stock, replacement stock. So we have different avenues that we've opened up. It's just we don't have the resources available to us. So that's a huge challenge for us. And we're not the only ones. We have other farmers in the area that, would benefit from learning all this. It's like a hidden treasure trove. Like, where do we find it? Where's the information? What can we do? So I love that you guys are doing this, and I'm excited. And I think it can do big things personally. Like, I can see it professionally and personally. So that's what I was stating. But I do love the fact that it's going to give an opportunity for growth. And it is true. My favorite part is when you guys actually mentioned the older generations that are getting out of farming and they don't have anybody to leave it to. It is true. It's a very dying art. It's a dying passion. And I would love to be on board to help elevate that and bring it back to where it was. Self-sufficiency, relying on what you grow instead of, importing beef. Like, that's just so silly to me. But I think you guys are doing a fantastic, awesome thing here. So, any questions?
Well, a couple, maybe, I don't know, the not answers, comments or follow-ons from what you shared. So I went back to this. Yeah, I'm still sharing my screen. I went back to this slide. So, not knowing more about, scale and specific, levels of capital and things that you're looking at, there are, just as in all of these things, more new, innovative kind of capital models that are out there, right? So, there's the traditional, going to your bank, there's FSA loans, things like that. People are, certainly co-ops that I support increasingly are using crowdfunding to help capitalize certain things. There's an art to doing that. But then these entities, these alternative lending and capital entities we have here, this is certainly not an exhaustive list. This just happens to be some folks that I met and presented with recently at the Marble Seed Organic Farming Conference. And so they are worth exploring. There are, if you form a cooperative of any kind, there is an entity called Shared Capital Cooperative, which is based in the Twin Cities, but it's a CDFI, and all they do is loan to cooperatives, and of all kinds and sectors. And so, that, and we have a close relationship with them, we being our Center for Cooperatives. And so if you have a cooperative or looking to establish a cooperative, Shared Capital is certainly a place to also look. Yeah, and one of the resources that we is on the list that I will just take the time to highlight, because so Farm Commons, which some of you may be familiar with, a small nonprofit based out of Minnesota, but they do provide all sorts of amazing legal resources around a whole range of farming topics. And in the fall, they came out with a guide about how to access the FSA farm ownership loan as a group of unrelated persons. I think for a long time, that particular loan, because it has such a low interest rate, has been kind of this like gold standard, or thing that a lot of people really, really want. There's a lot of demand for these loans, and it was only due to some sort of policy change or regulation change in the last 2 to 3 years that a group of unrelated persons can form an entity to access that loan. And so, and the Farm Commons guide, they talk about an LLC model, but I've been on the phone with FSA agents, and they have said they don't, the legal model does not matter so much to them, whether it's an LLC or a cooperative, so long as there is a checklist that all the owners would have to meet. But anyways, that, there are more and more kind of opportunities like that opening themselves up.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I do have a quick question. So
Sure.
I am literally pretty remote in northern Wisconsin, and I think cooperatives are fantastic. There is a larger dairy farm that is a cooperative, but I am not sure, like, I love the idea of it. I mean, it can have its challenges too, but how do you find people who would want to be a part of the cooperative?
Yeah, and that's I mean, I think it is working the networks that you have, and I think the nature of like the who is also in part dictated by like, well, what is it that you're going to cooperate to do? Do you need to have geographic proximity to each other, because of what you're going to cooperate to do? Can you be a little bit more dispersed? Yeah, so I know that there are between Farmers Union, the St. Croix Valley Food Alliance. There is a small producer-owned co-op up in Bayfield, the Bayfield Foods. They are one of the smaller ones that is been around a really long time and is still doing well. And they are a producer-owned marketing cooperative. So I don't know that I can name specific networks in northern Wisconsin to tap into, but I mean, I think
Kelly, I wanted to just mention that.
Add something.
Yeah, well, because I remember I was also at the Marvel Seed Organic Conference with you, and we had a couple of conversations there with farmers that are very interested, and they may already have a lot of cooperative ways of doing things, like kind of almost like operating agreements or even formal operating agreements. So there's nothing that's prohibiting you from like kind of trying out the ways first rather than like incorporating into a cooperative right away, so to speak. So just wanted to name that too, that it's not necessarily always an either or situation. Like your business incorporation doesn't always define, the way you do things. Would you agree with that, Kelly?
Oh yeah, right.
So,
the legal structure, and to some only defines so much to some extent.
So
yeah.
you guys are, this is literally the downside of being a farmer. You're always trying to think of ways to rejuvenate and regenerate growth, right? So again, as you guys were speaking, I was thinking, what do I have a lot of? Not capital and not land, but I do have a lot of bulls. So my question is, can you have an LLC and then go into a cooperative? If I went into like a cooperative to lease out my bulls, to sell my bulls, that type of thing, is that possible? Is that legal?
Yeah.
What kind of repercussions would you see?
No, so I mean, without getting too in the weeds of that particular kind of co-op proposal, when you set out to create a cooperative and you're defining what membership is, in most many co-op types, the members are businesses.
Okay.
So like most producer-owned co-ops, we have a range of like structures that are used for owning farms, from sole proprietor to LLC to different corporation types. And so for a lot of these producer-owned co-ops that do, aggregation and marketing, they'll say in their bylaws, farm businesses, and there'll be some definition, right, of various forms. And so there's, but yeah, there's no reason that LLC, a group of LLCs can't be the member owners of a co-op that sets out to do something together for them.
Okay, so that business structure, would that co-op then be the umbrella? Like, and then the LLCs underneath that umbrella, or?
With that, yeah, I mean, the LLCs would own something together. That doesn't mean that they aren't also independent, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So the co-op is serving some common purpose, some common need that they all have, but it's not like telling them all what to do all the time. If that
it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here for a second just so we can let people go. We're at the top of the hour, but Jeannie, please hang on, because it's fine that you're not done with the conversation, and me and Kelly are, I think, here for another couple minutes, but I wanted to thank everyone for coming. Again, to urge you to help us out by going to the brief evaluation that's been posted in the chat. Help us out by giving your feedback. Helps us to continue with programming like this. And I also wanted to give a very quick plug to our final feed webinar next Monday, same time, 2 to 3. Topic, developing marketing strategies for sustainable business growth. And we'll be looking at a case of maple syrup producers. So that's March 17th from 2 to 3 p.m. Same time, same place, same. Your registration link is good to go for that webinar as well. So once again, thank you so much to Mia and Kelly for this amazing information and this presentation. And but with that, if anyone has a very last question, or Jeannie, if you want to finish up, that's great.
Thank you. I appreciate that, but I think I've hoarded enough of their time. I apologize, everybody, for taking it over.
You asked some good
No
questions,
apologies.
so.
That's why we were here. So thank you for coming today.
Yeah, we put our emails in the chat, so we can definitely follow up with you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.